I'd like to call to order the Middletown City Council meeting for Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. Let's start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll for us?
Miss Nenny.
Here.
Mr. Moon.
Here.
Mr. Mulligan.
Here.
Mayor Condrey.
Here.
Ms. Vittori. Here.
Okay, before our public hearing this evening, we have a proclamation that is not on the agenda. So I'm going to come up to the podium for that. Okay, so this proclamation I'm going to read is for Susan Cohen. Whereas Susan Cohen began her career with the City of Middletown on August 15th, 2013, as the Assistant Prosecutor. On January 1st, 2015, she was promoted to Assistant Law Director, and on January 1st, 2018, she was reclassified as General Counsel for the City of Middletown. She was named the Administrative Services Director on January 1st, 2019, and whereas Susan Cohen was named Acting City Manager on November 5th, 2019. She has demonstrated incredible strength and wisdom as she guided our city through these dynamic, unprecedented times caused by the global COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. The pandemic created new economic storms and unique challenges, and Susan Cohen steadfastly faced these obstacles and kept the City of Middletown on course and moving forward. She was instrumental in the search for Middletown's new city manager and continues to support him as he takes the reins. The City of Middletown is grateful for her dedicated leadership, and whereas Susan Cohen's friendly, approachable style has earned her the respect and admiration of all those with whom she has worked. Her hard work and dedication continue to positively impact the City of Middletown and its citizens. Now, therefore, I, Nicole Condrey, by the powers vested in me as the Mayor of the City of Middletown, on behalf of the City Council, City staff, and citizens of our city, do hereby present this proclamation as a token of our appreciation and declare Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 as Susan Cohen Day in the City of Middletown.
Wait, I gotta take a picture. I forgot about that.
Do you guys want to get in the photo?
Sure.
Hold your breath.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you to everybody, my staff, my family,
Don't lose your proclamation.
for doing things. I just want to say thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will move on to citizen comments. We have 4 citizen comments this evening. I will call them in the order that they were turned in. First one is Detective Jason Wargo.
Thank you. The first thing I want to do is just say congratulations to our new city manager. I know we've already met, but I just want to say on behalf of all the officers of the Police Officers Union here in Middletown, we welcome you and look forward to working with you. And also say thank you to Susan. I know you're not going anywhere, but appreciate the work you did and stepping up when we called upon you. The next thing I'd like to talk about would be the SAFER grant. I know Chief Burke's already talked to everyone about it, but I think it's something that we really, really need. Our officers working the street are working really hard because we don't have the staffing we need and we have retirements. Sometimes they have to work 16 hours for some of us and detectives. When a big case comes up, we don't have the staffing we need. We're here 30, almost 40 hours in a row working a case. It'd just be really nice to get some more officers out there, and I know it's easier said than done to get this grant, but it'd just be nice to have some more people, especially for like our COP program. We put someone in the program, but I know we're allowed to have 2 people. We just don't have the staffing to put 2 people. And even though sometimes that officer is assigned to that detail, she's been asked to work in dispatch, or she has to work the street because we're so short. And then we still have 2 spots for our traffic officers, and we can't fill either one of those just because we don't have the manpower for it. So hopefully you'll take that into consideration, and hopefully we can get this passed. And going off the cue from our mayor, we know everyone supports us. They say they support us, but it'd be great to have this action behind it to show your support. So hopefully that'll help us out. And just lastly, October 31st of 2018, our contract expired. It's July 21st of 2020, and we have yet to have a signed contract, and we're just hoping to expedite that. I have people who are looking to retire who need a contract for reference. Supervisors are asking me, where's our contract at? I need it to help out officers, and just officers in general come to me and ask me when's it going to be finished. So I'd like to get it done before next year, and we have to renegotiate. So any help with that would be appreciated. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Detective. Thank you for your service to our city. Next, I have Levi Kramer on behalf of Baraka Church.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I am actually here speaking for Pastor Lamar Farrell from Baraka Church here in Middletown. He was unable to be here because he is currently out of town with his family. He sent me this statement, which I'll just read verbatim. Quote, "It was such an honor for Baraka Church to host the Boom, Blessings Over Middletown, on Friday night, July 3rd. We were at full capacity on our property with thousands of people in attendance. We had a beautiful evening, and our thanks goes to all who came out to watch. A special thanks goes out to Sean Askew and crew who brought 3 hot air balloons, the Middletown Fire Department, and the Middletown Police Department, and also a huge thank you to Team Fast Tracks for the amazing pyrotechnics display from the air. It was beautiful to see a 5,000 square foot American flag illuminated and descending from the air while the national anthem was played to the cheers and applause from thousands of Middletonians." Again, thank you in this body specifically to the Middletown Police Department and the Middletown Fire Department for your help there. Thank you.
Can you state your name and address for the record?
Levi J. Kramer, 24 Aberdeen Drive, Middletown, Ohio, 45042.
Thank you.
That statement was in writing. I will go ahead and email you that as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Next, I have Jeff Payne.
Good evening, Your Honor, council members. I'm Jeff Payne. I'm with the Downtown Middletown, Inc., and I'm here to, first of all, thank Susan for all of her assistance as we have been working through this year, and then to welcome our new city manager, Mr. Kalanick. We're looking forward to working with you. Just a brief story, I did have a little conversation with Kelly Krause, and she spoke very highly about you. And so we're just really looking forward to our meeting and working together. And that'll be it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. And the final one I have is Mr. Fred Hurst.
Mayor, council, I didn't intend to speak, but I'm here for streets tonight. I want to make a comment on those if I could. But first of all, I'd like to share with you an experience that I had with a water leak. I live off of Marshall, and a week ago Saturday, we experienced a leak, and it was incredible, the response of the city maintenance crew, particularly Mr. Haney, young man. who was quick to be on the scene within 30 minutes of my phone call. And the crew worked all weekend, did a fabulous job. So I can't say enough good about what they did. Appreciate the good organization and follow through. Like I said, I'm here for streets. I'm really concerned about the issue. I appreciate the journal's reporting. I think they've done an excellent job on that. And I would like to say, I feel like the can has been kicked down the road for 20 years. And I would hope that perhaps a citizens committee could be formed to study this a little further before any definitive action was taken. So that's essentially what I have to say. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Can you state your name and address for the record for us?
Fred Hurst, Hurst, 114 Stoles Drive.
Thank you very much. Making a note, sorry. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to council comments. Oh, sorry, oh, thank you. I missed it. I said I was gonna do it right, and I just totally. Let's do a public hearing. What do you guys think? Okay, I would like to open the public hearing for the road improvement levy. Do we have any staff members who'd like to present first?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Scott and I are here. We put together a brief PowerPoint presentation to just kind of highlight some of the information we think is important and related to the potential 0.25% income tax. Feel free, as I move on, interrupt, interject. I'll go over a few slides and then Scott will jump in as well. So this first slide is just showing the city funds only annual paving amount over the last 5 years. So city funds only means none of the grant money we received. So no ODOT money, no OPWC money, OKI money, or any other miscellaneous grants we received. This is truly just city funds, city tax dollars, city revenues spending on paving the last 5 years. So as you can see, from 2016 through 2020 budget, which we anticipate being an actual number, but at this point, obviously, we haven't spent it all yet. We've increased it quite significantly as our income tax revenues have increased. Council has passed budgets that spend more of the city's tax dollars on paving. The reason I left out the ODOT funding and things of that nature, that can really sway how much we spend. If we have a large project like Oxford State Road and Yankee Road, particularly when they're going on at the same time, we may have spent $7.5 million that year, but the majority of that spending was not city funds. So I broke this out to just show the city funds.
Does that include the gas tax in 2020?
So yes, so that, and in a slide, the next slide will touch on that. But yeah, the $3,650,000 includes the $1 million additional gas tax money.
Thank you.
And these amounts exclude any other large capital projects, such as the South University deck replacement. There will be paving with that, but the majority of that $2 million project is not paving. Most of it's underneath the bridge, fixing those types of things. This is a breakdown of that $3,650,000. The majority of our paving spend is for contractors.
When you say paving, do you mean just the actual street level or this curbs and?
So the $3,350,000 contractor amount does include $700,000 in assessments, which would be the sidewalk, curb, and gutter work. The rest of that is paving work, and this breaks down where that money is being spent from. $1.4 million from the general capital fund, $250,000 from stormwater, the $1 million auto and gas tax, which is the new gas tax money that went into effect in the summer of last year, and then $700,000 for the sidewalk, curb, and gutters. And then it just breaks down the streets to give you an idea of what does $3.3 million worth of paving look like. Those are the streets that the contractors are paving in 2020. And then the city crew paving is $300,000 this year, and that's been historically the amount we've spent from the auto and gas tax fund each year on paving. And our crews typically do smaller streets, courts, things of that nature, and the streets are listed there as well. And that 300,000 does not include whatever additional sidewalk, curb and gutter work will be on those smaller streets. And then once again, the South University Bridge project will have some paving, and that is not included in the paving amount above. And we're utilizing 800,000 of the OPWC grant for that project beginning this year. This is the slide on the 0.25% income tax increase. So if that were to go into effect, that would generate roughly $3 million additional revenues per year for the city. Finance department, we would create a separate street levy fund to capture all of the revenue received from that income tax increase, and then also capture all of the expenses. That way it's transparent. It's very easy to see the money coming in and the money going out. And it's easy to confirm that it was all in fact spent on paving related items. You'd have several options if that were to be in effect. You could spend roughly $3 million a year over the course of 10 years, if that's how long it was in effect for. Or you could decide to issue debt for a significant portion up front and be able to do $25 to $28 million as an example, all in the first couple of years of paving. That way, if it were to pass, residents see an immediate impact. Those streets all get improved immediately. You potentially get more bang for your buck. There would be debt service fees and things of that nature, but you're spending all of that now at whatever the costs are today, assuming inflation actually occurs and things get more expensive over the next 10 years. So those are really your two different options if this were to be in effect. The city's legal debt margin is currently just under 60 million. What the legal debt margin means is that we have a debt limit that's based upon our property tax values throughout the city. Those values are set by the county. We cannot spend more than 10.5% of those values. So our total debt limit's about 74 million, and we have approximately 14 million in debt currently outstanding that we're obligated to pay. So that brings you down to the roughly 60 million in debt margin that we can actually issue debt for projects. So if you took the 25 to 28 million, that would leave you just over 30 million in debt capacity for other capital project needs. And obviously that 14 million in current obligation will decrease as we pay off more and more debt over the next several years.
Mr. Burton?
Yeah.
Do you know where the auditor is? I believe, is it a 3 or 4 year cycle where he reassesses everything, where we stand in that?
Yeah, and I believe this year is an assessment year.
Okay.
And my understanding is that regardless of the current climate with the COVID-19 impacting values of everything, there's not going to be any change in the valuation that will be coming. So I would anticipate, I don't know how much, but I would anticipate some type of property tax increase.
Okay.
Assuming that all continues and nothing changes at the state or federal level.
So potentially a valuation increase, which would help our debt margin.
Correct. Yes, and that debt margin has increased slightly each year over the last several years. And then the last item that I touched on that we've discussed in the past is a streetlight fee. You can do this one of two ways. I've listed it as the fee, which would go on the utility bill, and that $3.11 per resident per month would cover our $700,000 in streetlight expense, and that we have roughly 19,000 utility accounts. Basically, it would free up that money rather than us spending $700,000 out of the general fund for streetlights. This fee would cover those expenses, and then we could divert that $700,000 to paving. If we implemented a fee like this, we would also create a separate streetlight fund, once again, just to account for all the revenues and expenditures. So it's all very easy to see for anyone who would like to see it. And Scott is going to touch on how kind of all of this how all of these financials impact the actual paving work that would be able to occur. And happy to answer any other questions you have now or when Scott's finished.
I think when we talked about the streetlight fee, it had been mentioned that a lot of our neighboring cities also pass that fee along, that we're an exception to that.
Yeah, I think the majority of our neighboring cities have some type of fee. And I guess I didn't touch on that piece. It does vary. Some of them do, as I presented, the streetlight fee, which is really on the utility bill that the resident pays monthly, and it comes with their water and sewer, et cetera. And some of the other entities around us do it on the property tax. So it's paid semi-annually with the resident's property tax bill. It's done a variety of different ways. Some of it's based upon valuation of the home. Some of it is based upon frontage of the home. So that's a little more difficult to come up with a quick estimate. I felt like this at least gave you an idea of this is about how much it would cost each resident per month if you were to implement something like that.
Jake, can you also touch, we have a 59 million roughly debt limit. There are some disadvantages to going out and say, hey, we want to loan $50 million, even though we could, why that wouldn't be a staff recommendation at this time.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the big things right now is, when we get a Moody's report annually, which is our credit rating, which impacts the amount of money we have to spend when we do borrow money. One of our strengths right now is that our debt limit for a city of our size is moderate, and it's trending better each year because we haven't issued debt in roughly 6 years, and we've paid off some significant debts that were on the books. So and our demographics are not so great as far as average household income and things of that nature that hurt our Moody's score. So if our debt limit gets too high and they consider us worse than moderate, if it's potentially higher than average or something of that nature, then that could negatively impact our Moody's score even further. So it's a potential disadvantage. And before we would issue debt or anything like that, we would get with our bond counsel and municipal advisors and do all of that analysis to make sure that whatever we're doing is the smartest thing to do.
And that rating affects sometimes our interest rate as well, right? At what rate we could borrow the.
Yeah, if our rating's better, our interest rate's lower, and vice versa. Yes. You're welcome. Okay, I'll click to the next slide for Scott.
Hello again. So we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, and just for the audience and the public, this is our pavement condition index for all streets in Middletown. So every 2 years, we have a contractor go out and inspect all the streets, and they rate every street section on a scale of 100 to 0. 100 being new pavement, obviously. The streets actually were last inspected in 2019. When we talked at the last meeting, we were looking at 2017 data, just to remind everyone. But I went back and was able to pull the 2019 inspections. And what I did here, the 2019 inspections were done prior to the 2019 paving program being completed. So I went ahead and plugged in what was done in 2019 and also what is being done right now during the paving that's going on right now, the 2020 program. So in effect, calling this our 2020 pavement condition map. So as a reminder, if you look at this map, green, in a nutshell, green is good pavement, yellow is fair, and red is bad. Obviously, we have a lot of red pavement, most of it in the residential neighborhoods where the citizens live. So here's just a quick comparison since we were looking at the 2017 numbers at the last work session. As you can see, we actually improved a little bit, and I think that was sort of, Jake talked about how we've ramped up spending. So we have improved a little bit since 2017. I typically group the top two categories and the bottom two categories together. So previously we were around 35%, which was pavement, which was considered good or better, and now we're at approximately 40%. And whereas if you look at the below 50, the poor, very poor, and failed, we were at 41%. Now we're just slightly better at 39%. Next slide. So, assuming we were to get a levy passed, as Jake was talking about, and we were to go out and bond a large paving program right off the bat, this is a hypothetical plan that would happen over a 2-year period. So what you see in red graphically would equate to about $28 million in work. That would be with the bond, the money that was borrowed, and that would be almost entirely used in residential areas, where the citizens live. In addition to that, we would continue our annual funding, approximately $3 million. It comes from various sources, and that would be committed towards main roads, arterials, collectors, and those are shown in green, yellow, orange, and purple on the map. Because we do have several projects already coming with the ODOT Urban Paving Project for State Route 73 on the north side of town. There's actually back-to-back years, 21, 22, and then the Central Avenue project shown there in yellow. So, if we were to go ahead with that borrowing and do a large program right up front, that would, on the local side, that would be 135 lane miles.
Scott, I know we mentioned previously to give citizens kind of a picture about how much it costs per lane mile in general to pave. Do you have any sort of an estimate?
Yeah, it varies obviously based on the condition, but typically 150 to 250,000 a lane mile. Just as a reminder, I know this has been put in the paper before, but we have around 620. Actually, we're up to 624 lane miles in the city.
So just for context, if we didn't do anything besides what we could afford now in 21 to 22, how many lane miles generally would we get done?
So, for example, this year's paving program was about 12 lane miles.
So 12, and then with this, it would be 135.
It would be 12 in addition to,
Oh, the 135.
well, no, so I'm sorry. What we would do the next couple of years would be 2 years times 12, so 24, plus the ODOT Urban Paving Program, which is, what's that work out to, 23, 25 lane miles, so.
Basically, you're accomplishing 135 lane miles instead of about 24.
Right,
Give or take.
thank you.
So assuming we were to do this over the next couple years, here's what our projected paving condition index map would look like in 2023.
And just for reference, these are not actual streets. This is just for a visual
Right.
example.
If you go back to the previous map, if you see a street that you don't agree with, or you don't see a street on there that you think should be, it's purely for visual purposes at this point. Try not to get hung up on individual streets. It's really just to show a graphic of like how large it could be. So as you can see the map, you see a lot more green. You still have some red in there, but it's a huge improvement potentially. And the next slide would be a comparison from 2020 to a projected 2023. Assuming you have the tax levy passed and assuming you bond a large portion of it up front. So you can see the percentages dramatically increase here. You go from the top two categories in 2020 being close to 40% up to having 71% pavement in good or better condition.
So I should have probably asked this in advance, so if you don't know the answer, that's okay. From an economic development perspective, obviously, well-paved roads is a draw. Do we know our neighboring cities where their percentages are, by any chance, on the poor to very poor?
I know Hamilton is very similar to us. I don't remember the exact numbers.
Depends on the neighboring jurisdiction.
Right.
Obviously, your older heritage cities like us, like Hamilton, have pavement that's older generally, that are probably in a little bit worse condition. Your newer cities where they're just now developing and they develop out of bedroom communities, it's gonna be a little bit higher.
Sure.
So I think it depends on the community.
I'm just looking at competitively when we're trying to get businesses to move.
I believe we're pretty close to, at least now today, to Hamilton. However, they've obviously passed a street levy and are looking at how they're going to implement that.
Thanks.
So again, you can see the bottom categories dramatically changed where we were at 39% poor or worse. Now you're only at 16%.
And if we did the streetlights, which is 700 grand, that's approximately 3 to 5 additional miles a year, just for comparison. Okay.
And then after 2023, that would be added into the lane miles that we're able to do on our own budget.
Right, if you were to choose to move forward with that streetlight assessment.
Because I think these the projections included $6 million of regular spending, but is that realistic based on current conditions?
That we don't know.
Wouldn't some of that, and Jake jump in if I'm wrong, that would include the ODOT money, the OKI money that is coming in over the next 2 years, and that's where you got the 6 million over the 2 years?
Actually, no.
No?
If I can do go back with the right. Sorry. So on this map, and I could have put it on there, but this does not include, so for the ODOT urban paving projects, we're going to receive approximately 2.9 million in addition to this total. And then for Central, I think it's a $4.1 million grant.
That $6 million figure is a 2-year figure, so assuming we have $3 million here, we currently
I
do,
see.
it would be $3 million in 2021, $3 million in 2022.
Oh, okay.
That's a good
Okay.
Yeah, 2 years, and that does include would include the Ohio Public Works Commission grants.
I see.
Right. And assuming the gas tax remains.
And assumes the gas tax remains.
But that number does not include the 700,000, or it does?
No,
No.
Okay.
that's assuming our current $3 million year funding pushes forward.
But, I mean, council has committed, I think, an extra 500,000 the last couple of years, so I think it would, there still is some general fund money assumed in that total.
Madam Mayor, members of council, if I might, I offered you some comments earlier, and if I could sort of reiterate some of those regarding what I sort of saw here. Obviously, if we're going to ask the public to put their hard-earned dollars forward on an additional income tax, they clearly want to see as much as we possibly can do and see the real results of that. So I have advocated that, the bonding route seems to be the best way to go, and there's a number of reasons for that, particularly right now. We are at historically low interest rates. I don't think, I have been in the profession now for over 30 years. These are the lowest municipal bond interest rates that have existed within that time frame. It's pretty much impossible to go lower, so the cost of borrowing for us right now is obviously very, very low. Also, given some of the economic realities of where we are in the next year or so, we could see some very, very competitive bids on pricing. So that means we could get more, in effect, bang for the buck if we're doing it all at once. The other thing is when you have a much larger project, there's economies of scale. So clearly that also means you're making the dollars go farther. So I think if we were to bond for this, and we mentioned $25 to $28 million, probably with the existing interest rates, that would easily be accommodated with that $3 million per year. You could do that kind of amount. So it would be very nice, in effect, to be able to tell our citizens that not just, you're going to have this quarter-cent increase, but we're going to be able to say that, this rather significant amount of lane miles that's probably going to touch on almost every neighborhood in the community in some manner or other is going to be able to get done within that first, 24 months. The other thing that I mentioned, which is a real possibility, is what has already passed, at least in one of our houses of Congress, is the opportunity to bring back what we saw in 2010 in the Obama administration, which were the Build America bonds. At that time, there was a 35% interest subsidy offered to municipal bonds, and the proposal now is 42%. And whether it's 35 or 42 or some measure of subsidy, if that comes back, that would mean significantly more as well that we could do, because typically that might mean on a bond issue of this size, $3 to $4 million more that we could do just because of the subsidy. So if there was ever timing to look at bonding this kind of work and having a really meaningful effect for the public and being able to say to them, and the map I think is really key, as Scott was showing, even though it may not be precise to the actual streets, it gives you that point of reference and that sense of this is the amount of work that will be done in this relative, 24-month period, which in a way we're really touching on almost the entire community. So timing is really good to be able to say to folks, look, we know this is tough, we know it's a hard thing to do, but at the same time, we can really accomplish an awful lot, get it done, and show you that, work can be done, really a sense of pride for the community. And as was mentioned, a real boost to economic development as well. When your infrastructure is dramatically better, it improves all things. Private investment tends to follow as well. So again, if I would advocate for, a way to go about this, certainly I would say it's an appropriate time to look at a bond issue with the $60 million of capacity, a little less than that should not be an issue when it comes to the credit rating, but it will do a lot for improving infrastructure in a really meaningful, really short way. So just, I know I'm the new guy, but those are the thoughts that I wanted to express and pass along. So thank you.
I
Thank
think
you.
also a point of reference just for the public, the average household income is about 40 grand, a little less in Middletown. So this would equate to $100 a year. So just so the public has a sense of what it would cost you, it would be about $100 a year if your household is an average $40,000 a year household.
So another alternative when it comes to the road levy is to possibly push it back to the May 2021 primary if we're considering putting it on the ballot. Is that something that concerns you with pushing it back and the bond interest rates? Do you think that that would put us behind the curve if we were to consider that?
I think just from what I've seen over the years, I don't see you're going to see much movement in the interest rates over the next 5 to 6 to 8 months. They're very low. They're going to stay very low. Might they uptick a few basis points? Possibly. The one thing that we could see in that time frame, though, is the potential that those Build America bonds come back. So, I mean, that is something that I think, we'd love to take advantage of if they're there. I think it would make a lot of sense. I know back in 2010, I was involved in a bond issue where we wound up doing about $5 million worth of additional work for what was going to be about $32 million, and that was on a 35% subsidy. So it can make a real difference.
Is it the case that if we had a bond issuance prior to that, that it would get grandfathered in, or do you know?
In the past, in 2010, under the ERA program with Obama, it was if you're issuing it as a Build America bond, it is. If you don't, no, there was no opportunity for that. Because in a sense, what happens is it would otherwise be a tax-exempt bond. By going with the Build America concept, it becomes a taxable issue, but then you get a significant subsidy against the taxable issue, which brings it well below what the cost would be of the tax-exempt issue. But it's a very different bond, and you have to issue it that way.
Could we still place this on the ballot and have it pass and not issue the bond until after we know whether those are going to go into effect or not?
Yeah, I think you've got two different questions. One question is, are we asking the public whether or not that they want to impose a 0.25% levy income tax in order to pay for road work exclusively? And the second question is, would you do that road work as bonded indebtedness or pay as you go? We're talking about bonded indebtedness, and so they're two separate questions. You could have one separate from the other. I'm just saying that it would be nice to be able to sell to the public that if we're asking them, that we want to be able to tell them it is highly likely as well that the nature that we're going to do this will be as a bond so that you can see a lot of work done in a short period of time and take advantage of that. But again, those are two separate questions.
Oh, Mr. Palaniuk, I'll just update you. I mean, there was never any scenario where I would vote to put this on the ballot and it not be bonded. I mean, that was a non-starter. We were always going to bond it. So, to Ms. Ninny's point, I think it could be voted on in November. If it passes, then we have something to talk about, and then we have something to bond. If it doesn't pass, well, then I guess the conversation is different.
So can we talk about then the timing? Because tonight we have legislation, and I just want the citizens to understand, I guess, why it's on here tonight, why it's an emergency, and how this plays out if, you know, a vote goes one way or the other on this evening.
If you were going to choose to put this on the November ballot, it has to be certified to the Board of Elections 90 days prior to it going on the ballot, which would be August the 7th. So if we want it to go on November, it needs to be tonight.
So
Now, if you wanted it to go in May, it doesn't have to be this evening, but if it needs to go in November to meet the Board of Election guidelines, it has to be tonight.
And I guess that's where I have a little bit of a heartache on this issue, to Mr. Hurst's point about trying to get citizen involvement. I feel like we kind of waited till the absolute last minute to bring this up and discuss it, and now our citizens aren't involved in our decision-making process to put it on the ballot. Now, I understand the point of putting it on the ballot is to have the citizens' input, obviously. I just feel like we all of a sudden, I know we've been talking about it for a long time, but I haven't seen in the last 6 months it brought to council and had a real discussion on it. I know Councilmember Moon asked to have that happen, and here we are at the last minute. Or Moon and Mulligan
I think
both.
Councilman Mulligan asked to discuss it back in February, and we
Exactly.
kicked it due to some more pressing issues, which is fine, I understand that. But the condition of the roads are not going to improve between now and next May. I don't think the feeling of the voters will change much between now and May. So I think the sooner we get the answer to the question of whether this is a priority for residents of Middletown and whether they want to expend more to fix this problem, the better.
And I think we have a lot of time between now and November to educate and engage the public on whether or not, you know, how it would work, what the numbers are, and whether they would want to vote. I mean, the voter education piece, I think, is actually probably the most important part.
So I think we need this. I don't think there's any question about that. My biggest concern right now is putting it on the ballot in November with COVID. Our citizens and businesses are at wit's end financially. I fear that even with a good marketing and education piece, that it has a high likelihood of failing. And by waiting until May, do we increase our likelihood of success? And to me, that's the question I'm asking myself tonight when I vote, is are we going to succeed by waiting until May when hopefully this situation has passed us a little bit more, because it's looking like by November this is still going to be sitting here with us. And that's where I am.
I think economically it'll still be sitting with us in May. I mean, I think the real economic fallout hasn't even really happened. So I would think by May it could almost be worse economically. I also think that we get better voter turnout for when you have a presidential than you do a midterm. I mean, if you look at the numbers, I think our midterm turnout is abysmal. So if you're really looking to get as many people, and obviously people need to go vote and that's their personal responsibility, but the reality is the midterm numbers of voters that turn out compared to a presidential is, I don't even know, a fifth, a fourth. So, I mean, I've never been a fan. I'm not a taxing kind of human. I think I was hoping we were going to generate enough income because we've been on this great, but with COVID happening, there's certain realities. I think it's fair to ask the public what they want. We hear it enough that they're upset about it, that I feel like what we're really deciding, we're not deciding to tax them. We're deciding to give them the opportunity to make their voice heard at the polls.
I was going to hold my question to my colleagues until the legislation came up, but it seems like we're getting into it now, so I'll ask the question. In the layout we see, $6 million every 2 years, which would be $3 million of our dollars, either be gas tax or general fund dollars. I want to make it clear to staff and to the public that would be our intention, would certainly be my intention, that if we were to put this on the ballot and if it were to succeed, we would continue to use our dollars, city dollars, general fund, gas tax, as we currently do. that this would not become the sole source of funding for roads, because that's not what we're presenting here, and I want us to be honest with the public and honest with staff as to the direction that we're going. So I wanted to hear everybody's, majority's take on that before we make any vote.
No, I agree.
I agree with that. I think this is additional dollars, not replacement dollars.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Well, do we want to open this up for comments then? Is that appropriate time for that? Okay. If there are any public comments people would like to make in favor of the road improvement levy, I welcome you to come up to the dais and make some comments. Okay. Do we have anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the road improvement levy? Would you like to come up and speak, Mr. Kramer? Yes. Name and address, please. Thank you.
Levi J. Kramer, 24 Green Drive, Middletown, Ohio, 45042. I apologize, I don't have anything written here, so this will be mostly off the cuff. I'm not going to reiterate the many oppositions that I have to increasing taxes for this. I've done it publicly and at this dais multiple times, frankly, until I've been blue in the face. I think that it is completely out of touch that we are talking about a tax increase the day after we have our families in this town concerned about whether or not they are going to have to become a one-income household based on what the the school board decided on last night. I think that if we are going to look at a ballot initiative, one thing we need to look at for turnout specifically is this past primary election, because it was a mail-in election, which has not been rolled out for November. Our turnout in Butler County was absolutely abysmal for an off year, let alone one with a presidential primary in it. I read news stories last year about budget surpluses that have gone to special project this, special project that. We just blew 30 grand on a 4-page safety analysis for the airport. Now, I'm not claiming that we can't necessarily, talk about a tax, but I think we should be talking about some other things first. And it's completely inappropriate for us to do this when we have many Middletonians that are relying on unemployment right now. The issues that I had stated previously with people having to make that hard decision on whether or not they're going to have to stay home with their children now. It's completely out of touch and almost offensive to try and say to these voters, hey, we want you to pony up here, especially at this point in time. Yes, we do have a median household income of right around $38,500 a year. I'm really curious if that's still the case this year due to the coronavirus. I think that there are far more options that we should be exploring here before we even talk about a tax at the last moment here. Now, I don't want to pat myself on the back. I'd like to think I'm pretty informed on what this chamber does, but I walked in here today shocked that this is on the agenda. The fact that we are calling this a public hearing where city officials spoke for 30 minutes before a member of the public could even come up is clearly showing that this is not being handled the way that it should. I'm never a fan of doing anything at the last minute. I think you need to delay this decision. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments in opposition? Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing about the road improvement levy. And since I went out of order and did citizen comments already, we will move to council comments. We'll start on the right with Ms. Ninny.
Thank you. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Jim Palahniuk as he joins us as Middletown's newest city manager, and also express my appreciation for the tireless efforts of Susan Cohen as she returns to her position from acting city manager. We have been truly blessed to have Susan at the helm as we navigated uncharted territory through these past several months. I have confidence that this new team of ours can lead Middletown to a brighter future for all of its residents. It is evident through our legislation tonight that Chriselle Lyons is already starting to work her magic through both small business and industrial development efforts. I look forward to seeing what else she's capable of accomplishing here in Middletown. And finally, we are diligently working to address the issue of street paving and maintenance with the help of Scott and Jake. This is an issue that always finds its way to the forefront because it is so important to quality of life for our citizens. When I ran for this seat, I told the voters that I would work to give them an opportunity to vote for a tax increase to improve the roads, and I hope to do just that tonight. I believe that the proposed increase would afford us the opportunity to make significant improvements, and as a citizen, I look forward to voting for its approval when I take my ballot in November. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Moon.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'll start with Ms. Cohen. We already kind of gave you a tribute tonight, but thank you for your work. You certainly couldn't have anticipated all that would come last November. And so thank you for taking the job, even though I know you didn't want it. You did a great job. To Mr. Palahniuk, couldn't be more excited to have you on board. Look forward to working with you, learning from you and your vast experience, and I know you are going to do wonders for the city of Middletown. So thank you for taking the job, and thank you for being here.
Well, my comments are going to be very similar. Thank you, Susan, for all your hard work, and I know you're going to continue to do a lot of hard work for the city. And welcome, Jim. And we're excited to have you not just working, but living in our city. So thank you.
Okay. Well, first to Ms. Cohen, I'll echo the comments that have made previously, but you have handled the past 9 months with professionalism and grace and good humor, and as a councilman, I can't thank you enough for stepping up and filling that role. There was really, I mean, it's hackneyed to say there was never a dull moment. I don't think there ever was a dull moment during these, every week there was something coming up. So, but you plowed through and you used your expertise, and thank you for staying on board, and looking forward to working with you for years to come. And to Mr. Palahniuk, welcome. You're obviously coming at an exciting time in Middletown's history, and this meeting is evident. We've got some weighty issues to deal with. So I, again, look forward to taking advantage of your expertise and knowledge and help, you can guide the city and guide council and staff to a better place. So I wish you all the best, and I look forward to working with you as well. Thank you, Your Honor.
It's like there's nothing left when you're in this fifth seat. Well, I would also like to thank Susan. I go back in my mind and I think about the paperboard burning down on New Year's Eve, and that seemed terrible. Like, poor Susan, she has to deal with that. And then now here we are these months later. So as everyone has said, you've done this job so well, and I've really enjoyed working with you, and I too look forward to that continuing. And I also welcome Mr. Palahniuk. It is fun times here, and I hope that you'll be able to quickly get a sense of this council and our passion for the city and help us take it to new heights. I had two other quick comments. One, back on the SAFER grant, I just had a thought. I just wonder if anyone wants to touch base. Given the COVID environment, I wonder if they're considering any relief in how that program works. I mean, handcuffing everyone to this certain expectation in a year 2, 3. I just don't know if they might be, and it might not be right now, but I don't know if anyone's had that conversation about potential relief.
We have had some conversations with them about extending the time we have to accept and asking if there's any different.
Okay, that's good. And then lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work of the Middletown City School Board last night. They had a very long, very extensive and thorough school board meeting. Our own Jackie Phillips did a phenomenal job, as always, really explaining the current situation of the virus and the potential rolling threat and what we could expect to see. And they made a very difficult decision, and not popular always, which that's how these jobs go. So I just wanted to commend them for what they did. That's true leadership. I think we'll see maybe other school districts start to follow them. So I just want to say congratulations for the fortitude it takes to make these decisions.
Great. City manager reports.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I don't have any specific report this evening. I would also, though, like to absolutely thank Susan Cohen for managing the organization so well prior to my coming here, so that it made my transition so much easier, as well as for really helping me in these first several weeks to really get up to speed and to understand the nuances and the intricacies and the details of so many of the things that are going on here. So I can't say enough about the work that Susan's done and what she's doing to assist me, so thank you again. I sincerely appreciate that. And again, I would just express to the entire community my goal to get out there, to meet as many people as I can, to talk to people, even in a pandemic world, to find out as much as I can about, you know, their interests, their goals, their concerns, what we can do as a city, and the kind of future that we can build for Middletown. So I'm excited to really get involved in it from every perspective, and look forward to the future. So thank you.
Susan, do you have comments to add? I'm not sure who.
I don't have any comments to add. I'm happy to come
Okay.
here. Thank you for everybody. I've enjoyed the last 9 months, although I'm sure I've always seemed a little bit crass. I'm happy to have Jim here, and we spent a lot of time the past couple weeks kind of getting up to date on things and really making sure that the activity needs to succeed. And I think we're going to be great moving forward, and we're looking forward to it.
Do you have an official title now? Is there?
I will go back to the Director of Administrative Services.
Okay, it's right in front of you. Okay, thank you, Susan. Okay, Ms. Skink, will you please present the consent agenda for us?
For your consideration this evening, we have to receive and file the cemetery board minutes from January 15th, 2020, and to approve the final record plat for Sawyer's Mill, Section 3.
I move to approve the issues and actions set forth in the consent agenda.
Second?
Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Yoder, the legislation.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Council, you've got 11 legislative items on the agenda tonight, 8 of which are being proposed as emergency measures, specifically items on the existing agenda 1 through 3, and then again 5 through 9. So before we get started, I'd just ask Council to pass a motion waiving the second reading and effective date requirements of the Charter.
I move to waive the charter provision requiring 2 separate readings and to declare ordinances number O-2020-30, -31, -32, -34, resolution 2020-21, -22, -23, and ordinance number 2020-35 be declared emergencies and read one time only.
Second.
Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is ordinance number O-2020-30, an ordinance approving an agreement with Noost Properties LLC, providing for the expansion of a manufacturing facility as a development project and tax exemption pursuant to the State Urban Jobs and Enterprise Zone Program, and making a determination in connection therewith and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Do we have any comments about this? No additional? Okay, Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is ordinance number O-2020-31, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing an amendment to a contract with Reliable Construction for the installation of a self-serve fueling system and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
I had some questions about this one. I know I asked some at the last meeting. I didn't hear back, but I have some additional ones. So there is an outlet that was created for this purpose that is on the, that I understand, that is on the shed, the newly built shed. I'm just wondering why we didn't buy an extension cord instead of spending $8,600 and making a new outlet.
Madam Mayor, if I could, Matt Eisenbraun is here. He kind of represents our airport, so Matt, if you could respond to that inquiry, we would appreciate it.
Good evening, Council. It's my understanding that the choice of where to put the new outlets was chosen based on having to put the trucks out away from the buildings themselves once the fuel truck shelter have been declared not usable to store fuel trucks, that outlet in its proximity isn't allowable, I guess is my.
So the regulation for the fire department is 50 feet from a building and also 50 feet from a parked aircraft. The current spot is actually very close to actually still being in violation, depending on where that aircraft parks. So that's also disturbing, but we could have just bought a 50-foot extension cable and plugged it into the shed.
My understanding that the extension cord was not an acceptable answer. They didn't want us to use extension cords.
So the fire department told us that. I think that the truck block heater has this long of a cable, so there's always going to have to be an extension cord.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the fire department told us we could not use an extension cord.
My understanding that by moving them out away from the buildings and in that location, which was what the manager chose, that the use of an extension cord was not an acceptable answer. And so the next alternative answer was to install a new.
Okay, so per the fire department, it was not an acceptable answer.
I believe so.
Per fire code, we are not allowed to use a 50-foot extension cable.
My understanding, the extension cable idea was not going to work.
Okay. I guess my other question then is, on this work order, so Susan mentioned that we were saving $10,000 by doing this at this time, since these are needed for winter. That was kind of my first question, like, why would we have just done it and asked council 3 months later? But in the work order is dig trench for the outlets and run the conduit. I would have thought that that would have been the money we were saving by doing it at this time. I'm just wondering why that couldn't have been, why we couldn't have waited. I mean, that's like the full work order.
The savings was from, in our discussion, the savings was from having the pad ready to go when the tank arrived. If we had to put the tank down when it arrived and the pad was not ready, it had to sit for 2 weeks and weather in, that costs about an additional $10,000. That number is both from the working with the group bringing it in, as well as talking about the tank that we had bought 2 years ago.
Okay, but we're just talking about the electric for the trucks.
But electric for the trucks, which is an extension off of the new self-serve system. So in essence, if we're going to put in the infrastructure to be able to serve the new outlets, in essence, that needed to be done so that the pad could be poured, it could get weathered in.
But wasn't there already electric, I guess, run for, I'm not sure why we're running a new trench and conduit. Was there not electric out there already?
I don't know where the electric was out there. I'm not familiar enough with the site of the project. But
Wait, my last question then is, there's a startup dispenser and card reader system not in original quote. What does that have to do with the electric of the trucks?
I don't know. I'd have to look at it and review.
Okay, I feel like there's a lot in here that is way over what it would have cost to put in electric that I don't even feel like we needed to begin with. So that's where I'm having heartache about this, and I just feel like I'm not getting a lot of answers.
And in part is part of the delay that had occurred. The original round of paperwork wasn't as complete as I would have liked. I asked questions, and it took some time for that contractor to bring some of that. In fact, the final invoice and total of the parts that were used there really didn't come until as it was done and after the fact. Again, this was more of a timing issue. I lost traction on the project itself. I apologize for that. This wasn't my best performance from that standpoint. But in the end, as this was rolling out, we did not even anticipate it being a change order to begin with. So it was an add-on project. And again, the ball started rolling. It got a little out of control. And this is what I was faced with. So again, I apologize for that, for taking things out of order. But this is the way.
I think that it just seems like the staff report is missing some of the reasoning behind a lot of the line items on here. And it's basically citing the fire department said we had to do it, yet there's a lot of other things on here that's not just related to that fire code issue that I still don't have 100% clarification if it really was the fire department that said we can't use an extension board.
Okay.
So I guess you don't have the answers, so I don't know really what. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, Ms. Kank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Ms. Condrey.
No.
Third item on your agenda is ordinance number O 2020-32, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with NFP Corporate Services to be agent of record for healthcare services from August 1st, 2020 through July 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Any comments on this one? No updates from last time. Okay. Ms. Kank, you please call the roll.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Fourth item is ordinance number O 2020-33, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for a small business economic development grant with White Dog Distilling Company. This is a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Any comments on this one? We went over it, and I think it's pretty well laid out. Ms. Kank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Fifth item is ordinance number O 2020-34, an ordinance to impose an additional 1/4% income tax on and after January 1st, 2021 for a period of 10 years to be used solely for the construction, repair, improvement, and maintenance of streets and roads within the city, and appurtenances thereto to amend Chapter 891 of the codified ordinances of the city of Middletown as amended, and to declare an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
I had a question for Mr. Palanek on his, the Building America bonds, and I know Monica asked the question, and I guess I'm still not completely following it. Putting aside the bonding question, if this were to go on the ballot in November and be passed, could we do an issuance of bonds in 2021 and still receive the benefit potentially of that program? Or does it have to wait until March of next year, next year's primary, to potentially see the benefit of that? Could we issue the bonds at a later date?
Yeah. Councilor Moon, we would clearly have to only issue the bonds after it had been determined that there was Build America bonds so that we could take advantage of that. So not knowing when those are, that could happen in January, it could happen in February, it could not happen at all, but it would have to happen after they were created because there's no ability to be retroactive, so.
Right, so
It would be speculative. I don't know when they might have.
sure, hypothetically, if it passed and if we held off until next July to issue the bonds, we would know at that point.
Absolutely.
It's not dependent upon when the election is, it's rather dependent upon when the bonds are issued.
Exactly. So our decision on bond issuance, we may very well want to look at, if it looks like the Congress is moving in that direction, to at least wait to see if that would be, because there is a big subsidy there. So yes, you're correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
I would just add one comment, Your Honor. And this, adding on to my comments prior, this has been an issue. I've been on council now for six and a half years, and this is the number one issue with voters. It's the number one issue with residents. It's the condition of the streets. This is what I hear the most of. So I'm not a proponent of higher taxes, but I am happy to get input from residents. And so, I don't, individual council members can do as they choose on whether to get out in front of this, be for it or against it. But, I don't think city council should be at the front of it myself or city staff. I think it needs to be a citizen-led initiative. If this is what they want, then citizens should drive it. But I'm happy to give them the choice in November, and I think that's when we'll get the most input. That's when voter turnout's the highest, and we'll be able to gauge how serious they are, how serious we are as a city, and whether it is a priority, and whether we're willing to put additional dollars for it. Thank you.
And I would add that staff has looked at this 6 ways to Sunday. There is no other miracle out there, save somebody buying a lotto ticket and deciding to donate it to Middletown, there isn't some huge pot of money or other process out there that we could use. So that's not really an argument. And some of the monies we've spent, and if you want to go back and look at that and try to, Monday morning quarterback us, that's fine, but $30,000 would pave from me to Susan. So, that's our job as council members, is to be as efficient as we can with dollars, but to also give the people a voice. And so, like Councilman Mulligan, I'm not a big proponent of tax, but I am a proponent of giving people a voice, especially when we've heard time and time again. I mean, we can have a public hearing, or you can go outside on the street and people grab you almost every day complaining about the roads. I don't really get people grabbing me, telling me how great they are.
I think that we would love to think that economic development is the silver bullet to getting these done. I think one day, I hope to be to the point where we are not having to do things like this. At the same time, I think if we're serious about it, this is just not the time. We've never been in a situation like this before, and I don't like how it feels. And I think if we're serious about it, that taking a better look at it in May and seeing this as a reality is where I would like to go. Any other comments? Okay, Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
No.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Sixth item is resolution number R 2020-21, a resolution directing the Board of Elections of Butler County and Warren County to place upon the ballot at the general election to be held November 3rd, 2020, the question of approving an ordinance to enact section 891.012.1 of the codified ordinances of the city of Middletown to impose an additional 1/4% income tax effective January 1st, 2021, for a period of 10 years to be used solely for the construction, repair, improvement, and maintenance of streets and roadways in the city and appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any comments about this? It goes hand in hand with the list. Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey,
No.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Thank you. Seventh item is resolution number R 2020-22, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, state of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency. This is out of the general fund.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Do we have comments about this? I think
Unfortunately, we have litigation matters that are taking significantly longer than we thought they would, and it is requiring additional funding, so we're requesting that so we can complete the legal matters.
Great. Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Eighth item is resolution number R 2020-23, a resolution supporting the Davidson Flexibility for States and Localities Act and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Comments on this one?
In this case, Madam Mayor, this is supporting a bill which would be very helpful to municipalities, and that is the CARES Act fund that has come out since the pandemic, that has allowed certain expenditures for local governments, has been very restrictive in the way that it has required governments to spend those dollars, and it tends to be only on things that are specifically related to the pandemic and only additional costs. So the biggest problem that most local governments have and continue to face is a huge loss of revenues and just a lot of financial difficulty. So this bill, in a sense, provides a lot more flexibility for the use of those dollars to recognize the fact that municipalities are really struggling, particularly with lower revenues, and there should be a flexibility in spending these additional stimulus dollars for whatever the purpose the municipal government needs, specifically to fill in where those dollars are no longer there. So we should and ought to be very strongly supportive of this, because it would really be helpful in terms of accessing, using the almost $1 million that has been made available to the city, but will be very hard for the city to spend because it's so restrictive.
Thank you to staff for putting it on. I was on a call with Congressman Davidson's staff when this came up, and I want to thank him and his staff for proposing this, and hopefully it will be either passed into law individually or as part of an amendment to potentially another stimulus plan. So I appreciate council's consideration. I think it would be in the benefit of the city, and I've shared it with some of our neighboring colleagues as well.
I think it's clear that our loss of revenue is a direct result of COVID, so it also should be included in. Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Ninth item is ordinance number O 2020-35, an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME Local 856, Public Works, for July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any comments on this one?
We have had traditionally two AFSCME labor units, one that covers a lot of our public works folks, and then one that has covered our full-time bus drivers. As we've changed some of our operations in the bus system, we are down to one full-time bus driver, and apparently despite it being called collective bargaining, you can't actually have a union with one person. It is incredibly inefficient to run though, and I don't know if it represents the best interest of any party involved. So we've been engaging in some discussions with our AFSCME unit about closing down our transit unit that has one person in it and enveloping that person in our larger AFSCME unit so that officially moving forward, all of the employees that are covered today would continue to be covered by union contracts, but it would be one collective bargaining unit so that they can meet together and enjoy all of the benefits of the collective bargaining system together. A lot of the contract is the same anyway, as we've tried to standardize some of the benefits for employees. And it was a pretty seamless move, but what we were asking you to do is amend the larger AFSCME contract that makes the changes to add this one transit driver system, and then we will administratively work to close the transit unit that would no longer have anyone in its membership.
Any comments or questions from council? Okay, Ms. Skank, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
10th item is ordinance number O 2020-36, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for a small business economic development grant with Babs Kayaking LLC. First reading.
Madam Mayor, council members, I believe we had a very slight change to this agreement since the agenda came out, and I just wanted to point out, it had been mentioned that the agreement wasn't as specific as it probably could have been relative to how the funds are to be used. The agreement now should be stating, in effect, that the $5,000, which is the small general assistance economic grant, will be used toward the cost of permits and or insurance associated with the, help me with this, Miami Conservancy District?
Yes, this business wants to increase kayaking interest on the river. To do that, they need to get access to a landing point that is on the river, but is actually owned by Miami Conservancy District. So this money will help them in paying for that permit and also meeting the insurance requirements for Miami Conservancy that are a little more than they were able to do at this point in time. So from our perspective, I think this was economic development, but it's also encouraging really that entertainment value of having some activity on the river and being able to promote that.
So they're putting in a ramp? Great.
All right, unless there's any other questions, I'll move on to the 11th and final one, which is ordinance number O 2020-37, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a forgivable loan agreement with Brent's Smokin' Butts and Grill LLC for small business economic development assistance. Again, a first reading.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Brent's Smokin' Butts and Grill, operating a food truck and catering business, wants to turn that into a brick and mortar physical location for a restaurant. This small business economic development assistance would provide $6,000 in the form of a forgivable loan at a 0% interest rate that would be put toward kitchen equipment and/or signage. The nature of the forgiveness on this loan would be that for each of the 3 years, the first 3 years potentially that they will operate, $2,000 will be forgiven for each year, so that if they remain in operations for 3 years, it will be fully forgiven. So it starts as a loan with 0% interest, but can become a grant if they stay in operation.
That concludes the legislative report.
Thank you. Okay. Under authority of ORC 121.22G1, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, we are looking to move to executive session. Do I have a motion? I have a motion.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Okay, we will adjourn following executive session until August 4th. It's Tuesday, August 4th at 17:30 or 5:30 PM here in council chambers. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you, Susan, and welcome, Jim. Blue skies over Middletown.